Here. So welcome to East Meets West. Today, I have Dr. Madonna Doyle. And today we're talking about communication for leaders, or leadership and communication. Very interesting topic. I find that many of us suffer or struggle with our communication these days because we're just not able to understand people, understand changes that are happening in the new generation, and how do we communicate. But Dr. Doyle here today is going to give us some key pointers that I'm sure you're going to get a lot out of her session here today. So who's Dr. Doyle? She is a passionate communicator with a background in mass media, community radio, and corporate communication. She currently heads Madonna Doyle and Associates Limited, her own firm in providing customized solutions for individual, team, and organizational communication issues. Madonna is a leader of leaders and has been involved in several pioneering initiatives that have transformed the lives of countless and positively influenced the ministry of faith-based organizations in Trinidad and Tobago. Yes, Madonna is joining us from Trinidad, and she is also a motivational keynote speaker, a poet, and yes, an author of 3 publications. So I'm sure she's going to tell us more about herself as we go into this session today. But Madonna, I want to welcome you and say thank you for giving some time to us here to learn from you. And despite all your busy schedule, we do appreciate you joining us today. So I know I have not done justice to your introduction, but is there anything else you'd like to add to what I've said? And please do.
Shanti, thank you so very much. Really, it is a privilege, it's an honor to be with you and your guests at in this space. And compliments to you and your company, Lead to Influence. So yes, indeed. I would think that I was born to communicate, and I think I only discovered that many years after. I remember doing poetry at a very early age, maybe around 4 or 5, and my first professional job was as a radio producer. So that has been my DNA, and I discovered that, as I shared, quite late in life, that is what I've been called to do. And I want to encourage other people that it is not too late. Right? We didn't have, when we were growing up, well, perhaps I could speak for myself because you look much younger than I am. We didn't have all this information about purpose in life and what you're called to do and so on. And I grew up in God, and we were just told, whatever you put your hands to do it with all your might and do it as unto God. And so therefore I stumbled into purpose. And what if I could leave some of your audience with this one thing? It's never too late to discover your life's purpose. It's never too late. And to encourage persons who may have written off themselves because they find that they're too old, no, don't write off yourself, right? You can discover purpose at a late age and jump into it. And now you have a whole body of experience and training to give to this phase in life. And so, yes, I have been involved in communication at the community level. Right now, we're leading a community transformation initiative in a less resourced community in the south of Trinidad. And my company is all about transforming the culture in the organization through leadership communication style, through and coaching the leaders, looking at their communication processes, and equipping them with the communication tools and approaches and mindset and systems to facilitate employee engagement. And Shanti, I don't know if you're seeing any of the research concerning the key between communication, employee engagement, and productivity. I don't know if you've come across that, because I don't want to preempt anything you're saying, but it is an amazing thing because, for example, I think there's some research coming out of Harvard Business Review that indicate one, some of the top issues facing HR professionals, employee engagement and productivity ranks one of the top issue. There was also the values graphic, which plots some of the trends, and among the top 5 trends, it's about relationships and community and belonging. So, and the work that I have done in my thesis shows that there is a direct relationship between leader communication style and employee engagement. And the World Bank, in fact, drew that link, that there's a link between personal values, corporate values, and employee engagement and productivity. So I am very fascinated that what I stumbled into, right, really is a key concern and a key driver for those, what they call these bottom line matrices in organization. For example, the triple bottom line of people, profit, and planet are the core of getting the organization profitable, getting all the people issues, and treating with planet sustainability. The key is communication. And I really want to share with persons that communication in its broadest sense constitutes your organization. Now, imagine that in the day of COVID, many organizations had to shut down their brick and mortar operations, but they could not survive without the communication interactions between leaders and the employees. And that is a fascinating and amazing thing. And when I talk about communication, it is interpersonal communication. It is written communication. It is spoken communication. It is leveraging the information and communication technologies to serve all the moving parts of the organization. So I'm pretty excited to share with your audience that we need to take a deep dive into communication and see how it impacts, it transforms our lives as the individual, at the community, at the church, at the corporate, at the national level. So you've gotten me started.
Oh boy. Well, Madonna, I could tell you honestly that everything that you've said there, from studying and our research, and yes, my thesis was similar to yours, but mine was directly related to servant leadership and their behavior, how it affects employee engagement, and if there's any relationship at all. And indeed, for my research, it did come up that, there's some sort of relationship between the two. And I know for you, yours went more in depth into communication. And indeed, I think many of us, why we're not achieving personally, the things in our life, it's because we're not able to understand what is it too that we want and to work towards it. And then, because sometimes even as leaders here, we do know in a sense what we want, but we don't know how to communicate it also to others so that they could buy into your vision and they could come alongside you to be able to make those things happen. So yes, communication is very broad, and I know that within this half an hour or so, we cannot do justice to that topic. But I know that your research was based on this here, and the things that you're going to give, it's going to be a lot of nuggets, I would say, for our listeners, and just some key points that people can take away, that we can learn from, that we can go just adopt in our lives to have some little shifts in our communication. And when we always say true communication is the response you get. And some people don't take ownership for that, that when I communicate and somebody didn't get it or they didn't do what they're supposed to do, that it's you, that you maybe not have connected with them on their level so that they could understand what you're saying. So it's your job, your responsibility to ensure how you communicate, that you communicate at that person's level so that they could understand, or in their style per se, so that they could understand what is it that you're saying or trying to get over to them. But I do look forward, and yes, employee engagement is also one of the areas that I've studied, and you see that employee engagement has gone down, and it has to do a lot with the leadership and indeed with their value system, because your values is what guide you in all your decision making. And so it's really interesting. And I must say, in Guyana, we don't, well, I haven't come across much research or any research, as a matter of fact, on the two areas of engagement and servant leadership. But I'm sure in the Caribbean, though, I did come across some areas on that. And I'm sure in your research also, you would have gotten some research from Trinidad and what's not. But it's something I really believe that the more we can go into these areas and in the research side of it, the data, so that companies, so leaders can make better decisions to know what's happening. And maybe you can talk on that part of it, because the importance of actually companies, countries having data so that they could be able to make better decisions. Because from country level too, what was happening in the country, in our organization, if you're not doing any research, any surveys or anything to gather information of what's happening, how are you making decisions? So Madonna, I am sure you're going to talk about all of that and how important it is for us to gather those data and get them so that you can improve what you want to do.
I will give you, Shanti, thanks so very much, because and as we recognize, communication is not simple, it's highly complex. So you've distilled from your commentary issues around data-driven decision-making. You're looking at leadership style. We're looking at the leadership, well, the leadership communication style, and even the subtext about when you spoke about communicating at the level where the employees are. So let me distill a few things from what you've just said. One of the things, or one of the communication approaches and tools that we've developed is the effective leadership conversations. And that has to do with the productivity, the sort of engine room, the operational effectiveness. Now, there's a key between what communication style a leader engages in to help the people in the forefront of operations get clear instructions, follow on, report back, and learn from and improve on processes. When we look at leader communication style, there is one particular style that is very effective for the operational people. And it is that style called preciseness. People in operations want to know exactly what you want, but leaders tend to be visionaries and they don't drill down into that level of detail. So there has to be one, either you teach leaders to be more precise in their communication, or leaders need to be able to share with middle managers their vision, their dream, their overarching goal, and have those intermediaries, those middle managers, deconstruct the visionary type of communication, the long range, and deconstruct it into precise instructions for the frontline employees. And frontline employees will say, yes, I understand, I'm going to give you what you want. So first of all, we've got to tell leaders, listen, and I'm a big picture person, so I know how difficult it is to break down my vision into step by step. I get frustrated, but I have somebody, and I have a couple of people who can take my big picture communication and says, okay, we can break down what we want into these goals, and it will take how many hours, how much money, how many steps to do that, and then now we could go to work. And it is an understanding of that I would want to share with visionary leaders. The need now either to have an intermediary or to have an understanding that visionary communication needs to be broken down into steps so that implementers can run with it. And it's interesting because the Bible says in Habakkuk 2:14, I think, write the vision, make it plain, all who see can run with it. And that's a big thing. You have to break down that visionary communication, that your dreams and so on. So that effective leader conversation is a big piece for leaders. right? And also to tell frontline employees who may be saying, why did not tell me what they want? Oh gosh. And it is simply because you have different communication styles, because you are wired differently. There are people who like step-by-step instructions and they want that to run with it, but there are other people who just want the big picture and they're ready to go. So that understanding about what effective leader conversations means, it is an eye-opener for the operational part of the business. I wanted to pause there. I see your eyes dancing. So tell me your thoughts on that.
So what I thought about is myself. When you said that visionary, I think for me, in a business and all of that, I am the one that has all the ideas that I could see beyond. And so I'm more of the visionary aspect, but I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, yeah, how many times maybe, as leaders, we have failed to relate that vision over to people so that they could buy into it. And indeed, people would say, or your team members will say that, well, I didn't know or understand. And the other aspect too is I'm thinking, if I may add, is that why or how would somebody, one of your followers, one of your team member, how would they benefit from this vision? Right. And if people don't see themselves in your vision and what it's going to do for them, they would not buy into it. And so it's, yes, being precise step by step. And yes, for me, I am more of the helicopter kind of view, but not detailed oriented in a sense. But yeah, indeed, we need to break it down. We all communicate differently. And indeed, that is something I see happen with many leaders, managers. They tell someone, this is what I need to get done. But if that individual is more of a detail oriented person, they want to hear, okay, what their next step 3, step 4, step 5, and you can confuse them when you actually give them the end without breaking it first. And then some people like me, I want to hear the end first and then tell me how you're going to get there. Right. And so understanding the difference between people, indeed, that is so important what you're saying.
Yes. And a couple of things, that understanding of people's style and people needs, because inside of there, unpacking what you just said, there is that need for our frontline workers. And I think everybody says, what's in it for me?
Yes.
Right? And servant leaders and transformational leaders also take on board the needs of the people who they lead, right? Now, I just want to pack something there, park it in the parking lot, that managers and leaders are not necessarily the same thing, right?
Yeah.
But transformational leaders, servant leaders, look to see how they can equip and empower the people they lead to fulfill their purpose. And in doing that, your dreams are materialized, your dreams come to fruition. So for example, and that understanding of people that you ended with just now is so critical. You could look and in your conversations with persons, or even doing assessment, personality assessment, you begin to understand that there are different communication styles. And with that understanding and the understanding that people are asking, what's in it for me? You begin to motivate people differently. So some people are intrinsically motivated, saying, listen, the joy of working, of seeing my project come to fruition, that's enough for me. And some people are motivated by the money and the perks and the so on. They both get the jobs done, but the recognition and the reward would be different. So therefore, for the ones who want the tangible, the extrinsic rewards, you build in something. You may not always have the money, but you could give people a day off, because they may want to spend time doing their personal business, doing their stuff with their family and so on. And for them, that's fine. But that will only come as we negotiate, as we understand that this person will be driven by extrinsic rewards. The person who is driven intrinsically, a recognition plaque may all that they require, right? Or elevate them, bring them into the boardroom when you're making decisions or you're having conversations with boardroom members, and that's great enough for them. So that critical thing of understanding personality, understanding communication style will help with how do we motivate, how do we incentivize persons to achieve the goals of the department, of the organization. But it takes the willingness of the leader to recognize that you need to learn how to influence. It can be learned, and a humility to submit yourself to learning communication styles, and one style does not fit all.
Yeah.
So one of the communication style, the first one is effective leadership conversations. Right? You were going to say something. Sorry for.
No, so I was thinking of the intrinsic and the extrinsic, and when you said the humility of a leader, I would add to that, taking the time out, because everybody seems to be so busy, and it would require you to take time to learn about your team members, them, how they would like to be communicated to, what are their motives, what drives them. Are they more motivated by extrinsic things, or are they more motivated by intrinsic? So that when you connect with them, you know how to deal with them, because you can have that mismatch going on, trying to inspire them, motivate them by doing extrinsic thing when they're more intrinsic. And so that part of it is, as leaders though, is taking that time out to get to know the team members so that you know what motivates them. So
correct.
That was what just came to my mind.
Yes. A few things. I want to circle back to something that you spoke about earlier, which was the data-driven decision making. But I also want to just kind of segue. That humility to learn. And there's a philosopher that said the unexamined life is not worth living. I can't remember who, but I'm musing on that. And that taking a time out, leaders taking the time to reflect on how they're doing, reflect internally, but also look at the data. And that's why I say I want to circle back. If you don't put in place KPIs, key performance indicators, what are the metrics? What are the best standards, best practices for the task, for the process, for the department? How do you know you're doing well? And we need to do more of that in the region. Right? I must confess, earlier on when I started my business, I was gung-ho because I love communication. I could write, I could teach people how to speak and so on. So the business, quote unquote, wasn't a business, it was an extension of my passion. But of course, these things catch up with you. And therefore, I had to put in place these matrices, these indicators, and begin to say, listen, my business is doing stronger in this sector. This is the impact, the feedback I'm getting. And now how do I ramp up this particular program or this particular approach in that sector to grow more profitably. Well, so the key thing about data-driven decision-making is for workplaces small and large, right? So analyzing your receipts, analyzing where you're spending would help small businesses and of course the larger businesses. So if you don't put those, and that's a form of communication, written communication, harvesting your data to help you make better decisions around leading people and becoming more profitable.
Definitely.
Again, communication, darling.
Yep. I know that, many things you're saying here, some people know and some choose not to do it. And, as you said, it comes back to haunt you later down.
Oh, yeah. And, I was sharing with you and share with our audiences some key communication skills. So for the profitability part, that recognition that we need data to help us become more profitable, I want to leave that. And that is also part of the effective leadership conversations. How do we put systems in place to track our data so that we could make better decisions around profitability? Then there's a second type of conversation process that we've developed at our company. It's the restorative leader conversations. And that has to do with conflict. Conflict is one of the things that drains the organization of money, energy, time, and it diminishes and degrades the working culture. I remember very early in my working in the public service of Trinidad and Tobago, I remember a senior officer says, put everything in writing, you have to CYA. And I hope you know what that is. And when there is a low trust culture in an organization, you have to put everything in writing, you have to CYA, cover your. And therefore, leaders need to know how to engage in what we call restorative leader conversations. That is the processes. First of all, the attitude and processes towards managing conflict. The attitude is important when we understand that where there are human beings gathered, there will be conflict. Conflict is inevitable. And once we recognize, we take the stress off of ourselves, because there are some people who avoid conflict like the plague, like a COVID. And you need to recognize that, as the old people say, tongue and teeth will clash. So conflict is inevitable. And I wish I were in front of an audience and I would ask them to say after me, conflict is inevitable. So you've got to embrace it. Right?
Yeah, yep.
And in doing so, you recognize, okay, conflict may be an opportunity to examine what we could do better, what is going wrong, how could we improve? And wow, I would love people to exhale. And therefore, we need to so deal with the attitude towards conflict. And there are some tools around that. It's called thought shifting. So instead of saying, why is this happening to me? We said, why is this happening for me? And that is a huge emotional and cognitive shift, because it could be, if you embrace it, you'll see this is an opportunity to see what is going right, what could be improved, what is going wrong, who is dealing with, or who is the person that I need to engage with, right? To treat with these issues, right? So the attitude, thought shifting, instead of why is it happening to me, look at why is it happening for me. And then we deal with the skills. There are some basic skills around managing conflict. Right? The first thing is what we call storytelling. Tell your story, let the other tell his or her story. And in telling these stories, and sometimes you ask to repeat, you begin now to ask for paraphrasing and repeat it, so that you get the who, you get the what, you get the impact, you get the why. And now you are able to work with these components of the conflict issue. And at the interpersonal level, we have a tool called the I message that first identifies what is the problem or what is the issue. And it must be something that you can observe. Because sometimes you'll say, my blood takes she, how could we treat with something like that? But we could treat with when you arrive late, you affect the process in this way. I would prefer we could treat with that. We could treat with the late coming. So the first thing about the I message is to identify the issue or the behavior that you're observing. The second thing is the emotional aspect of it. How does it make you feel? When you arrive late all the time, I feel disrespected. I feel taken advantage of. And what is the impact on me and on the team? When you arrive late consistently, and over the last 3 months, I've been seeing that out of the times you've come here 90 times late. And it affects me. I feel you're disrespecting what I'm trying to do. You're dishonoring, and it's affecting your team members. Somebody else have to take up the shift after you. And those person have family issues too. So how am I feeling, and how is it impacting on me and on the team? And then now there are alternatives. I could suggest, what are you suggesting, right? As an alternative, what is the issue? Is it that you have babysitting problems or whatever it is? And we begin now to drill down at the core. And then you present an alternative behavior that doesn't sacrifice the team. It doesn't sacrifice the task. And now we arrive at that solution. We document that because that should go on the person's file. You document that, and now then, we agree on this. And then, of course, when you're trying to resolve conflict, there's some tension in the air. People, you feel a little uncomfortable. And I always say, you can give a little gift, like a little dinner mente. Say, we good? We good, right? But you're not stymieing a disciplinary process. That discussion is important, and you put that on the person's file. We have agreement on this, and then we treat with the heaviness in the emotion, in the atmosphere. A little gift, a little token, a little laughter, and so on, and we move on, and you monitor the behavior after that. You see?
Yep.
So those are part of the restorative leadership conversations.
Madonna, you make it sound very easy.
I live it, and it's not easy. Because your natural tendency would be to hold on to somebody's neck and say, I wish I could strangle you. That may be the God thing. But no, with informed leadership, and as we learn to lead, and according to your logo, lead to influence, we learn how to harness our emotions. And that is another skill. Learn when to delay and learn when to display your emotions. It's another leadership skill.
Yeah,
right?
I know. Definitely you will have to come back and tell us more about these different leadership style and the communication styles. But when you talk about conflict, I do see, so in my team, I'm the one who actually is very comfortable with conflict. I would create the conflict all thing just to get people to talk. And some people, yes, some people would not like conflict. They will shy away. They would do everything possible not to be in conflict. But I think many people need to understand is that conflict is good too.
Yeah. Yes.
Unless you have some good conflict among the team, many ideas wouldn't, even be improved. And by them being able to argue it out and respectfully, obviously, and
Yes.
argue it through, you will see so many things that are coming out, and they get to learn from each other too. So it's not about you just, okay, if I say something, this person might get offended, and they might get angry if I am rebutting something, but maybe you're seeing something they're not seeing. And because you're not comfortable to say it because you don't want to, offend them, and then you end up in an argument. But sometimes it's good. It brings out a lot of things that might the other persons then might not be thinking about, especially
Well
when
said.
you're in a group. So be okay with conflict. And I do believe that, you started off by saying a verse that whatever you do, do it to your best. And, as if you're doing it for God. And for me too, it's like when I'm interacting with people, one of my policy too is that this is the image bearer of God. How would I treat him? Or, what would I say? Whatever it is. So it kind of reframe the way you would have interacted. So when you enter into a conflict with someone, how would you treat them? And so I think the thought shifting part that you're talking about too here, it's so important that, sometimes many people, especially highly emotional people, kind of go on the other end instead of, okay, what is happening here? Okay, what can I learn from this here? What can I do differently? And these kind questioning yourself to see how can you show up different? What could I have said differently? All these things, so that it's not just about you and, oh, I feel like this, and you got angry, your frustration build up, and whatever come to your mind just roll down out your tongue, and you just say it, and and it's a big confusion and a quarreling and what not happened. But no, just calm down, give yourself time, as you said, and think about it. What is it that we are trying to achieve here right now? How would it benefit us?
And that that will piggyback on what we talked about earlier in the humility to learn, because those are skills and approaches that can be learned. We can teach and we invite leaders to learn these skills. You're not born with conflict resolution skills, but it can be learned. Yeah.
Yep. Just as you said, leadership can be learned. None of us are born leaders, but on a daily basis, we do influence people. And John Maxwell says leadership is influence. So on a daily basis, you are influencing others, whether it's positive or negative. So you can learn how to be better in your leadership skills. You can learn how to better handle conflicts. You can learn better how to, engage your team and communicate with them. And it's a lot. It may sound a lot, but if we really want to be effective, as you said, effective leadership, if we want to be effective leaders, then it's putting in the time to learn how can I adopt my style to others. And it's same for me, right? When you talk about, big picture, when I know who I'm talking to, I come down, I break it down so they get it. Some people are more visual. I go to the whiteboard and I just draw it there or write it up there, plan it out there. So then, oh yeah, now I got it. Then me just talking it and then understanding what I'm saying. But indeed, Madonna, the things you shared here, I'm sure, there's so many things going on in our organizations that these pointers that you've given here, it's something for us to go back and, re-examine how do we handle these conflicts as leaders. What stories also we are telling ourselves that might not be true.
Well
And how
said.
to change those stories so that we can connect with people. And do we really want to connect? And I'm sure we want to have better relationship that are strained is also draining on an individual. And so how do we get better? Being humble enough, put aside time enough to get better at leading you so that you'll be able to lead others. But I know we're coming down to some our closure here, but Madonna, I want to give you a chance to also wrap up on what you're also sharing about our leaders and their communication style. And I do know that you will come back, and I would love to hear more from you, how we develop our leadership skills and our communication skills and all of that.
Yes. I would say, as we wrap up, I come back to this quote: the unexamined life is not worth living. And we need, as leaders, and I want to enforce that you do not have to be at the top of your organization to wear the title called leader. Maxwell again spoke about the 360-degree leader, somebody who's caught in the middle. And he also said, don't strive to lead the organization, but strive to lead yourself at your game. Be the best at your game, right? So when we're talking leadership, we're not just speaking only to the top, the head leader of the organization. Wherever you are in life, you're influencing self and you're influencing others. So one, we need to examine how we are influencing others, and we pack in as a leadership coach and trainer and transformational leader. I invite persons to be trained, expose yourself to coaching, expose yourself to retreats in which you can reflect and examine your life and how you're influencing and impacting the people that you lead. So examine yourself and your approach. Two, these skills can be learned. They can be learned. The skill to communicate can be learned, and you can improve on your skills and approaches to communication. And the final thing I want to share with persons is that at the end of the learning curve, you've got to be able to equip others, teach others, and that's how we know that you've gotten it. Begin now to think of the next generation. Begin to think of the young people and how do I coach, equip, train, and empower the next generation to leave the space better than how I have left it. Okay, so that's what I'd like to leave with your people.
That is so powerful. That part of it, many people are not thinking. And I see many businesses, especially, that are going on there because the previous leaders, the owners have not empowered others to continue from when they're going to leave off. And so you see that happen in many organizations. There's some really good leaders, and when they leave, it's a total different shift, or the organization just start gradually moving downwards. So as leaders, indeed, the succession, think about, who are you grooming into taking up these positions in the future? Who are you started grooming now? So there's a very good point and key point that I do hope many of our viewers are listening to and will take, some precautions to be able to start putting some of these things in place in your organization. And most of all is re-examining how you lead. And so, Dr. Doyle, I want to say thank you very much for, again, giving us your time and today your wisdom and the benefit that we have all gotten from listening to you today. And I know there's a lot more in your brains there that you can share with us that we can all learn from and keep getting better. And the whole goal here is that we keep adding value to people. And I do encourage you to reach out to Dr. Doyle. She can share a lot with you. Her information will be shared below in the comments so that you can actually connect with her too. And if you have any questions or anything that her organization can assist you with, I do encourage you to please reach out to her. And she's such a loving, kind soul that she loves helping people. And so do reach out and in fact ask any questions too on in the chat or in the comment section, and we will respond if you have anything you would like to ask for more clarity or so, or any comments that you may have about the session today or something you like to add. Do share this video also with others who can benefit from it. Thank you again for tuning in, and thank you, Dr. Doyle. And we will definitely have Dr. Doyle on this program again and next time, sharing some different aspect on communication and leadership and her research and her books and her publications that she's have. Oh boy, there's a lot I know we can learn from her. So thank you again, Dr. Doyle.
Thank you, Shanti, and blessings, and all God's blessing on your company leads to influence.
Thank you very much. So take care. See you in the next session on